Hello team, this is another ATP Geopolitics video. I can't even get the introduction right 4 times in a row. Hello team, this is me, Jonathan MS Pierce. This is Ukraine War News Update. This is a Frontline update for the 11th of April 2024. My brain is melting, just melt. I need to get on the treadmill. Right, if you don't know what lines on my map mean, please check out the video at the moment, pause the video. And we'll move to the front lines. You can see, thank you to JR who's done the mapping. JR contacted me earlier because he was like, hey, it's good to get credit. And someone had said, thanks, JR, for the updates. And basically called JR me, or me, JR. I sometimes get called Andrew. Who knows? We're just a team. We're just delivering information to you guys. You are us, we are you. Anyway, you can see that this is a good news day in terms of mapping for Ukraine, but beware, because when there aren't pins on the map, I talked about this yesterday, these mapping lines refer to the defensive lines of the Russians. So while there might not be pins to show Russians have made consolidated gains such that their defensive lines have moved forward, there are many instances where the Russians are attacking in a number of places and they are moving into new areas, but it's like attacks, tentative attacks, or it's dynamic. There are both forces in the same general area, so those are grey zones, and grey zones can indeed increase in size. So you might think that's good news, but it might also belie the fact that the notion that there is lots of activity going on. No change in that northeastern axis again, from Kupiansk to Svatova to Crimea. Really very stabilized at the moment. That's great news for the Ukrainians. As we come further to the south, past Crimea, to past the Serebryantski forest, which is not green anymore. It is a hugely defoliated forest. There is not a lot of foliage in the trees there anymore. It's a real shame, an environmental catastrophe as well as a human one, this war. The Russians have made some gains to the, I guess, northwest of Verkhnokhamyanka towards Verkhnokhamyanska, because, you know, Ukrainian names. This is noted on Syriac maps, the pro-Russian mapper, with the Russian army restarting operations there on that axis. It took control over part of the trench system east of the locality. Just a small amount of ground there, but interesting that this area hasn't seen activity for some time, and then suddenly a little bit. I mean, we did see some gains for the Russians. This will be possibly part of their larger attempts to properly surround Avdiivka, and would be worrying for the Ukrainians if they continue to do so, because it means that Avdiivka becomes less and less tenable, and that's so important for keeping this whole Seversk front line at bay. The Russians are making these grinding gains to the south in the Vesely Berestova region. But it's a long way to Seversk from there, and there's a lot of topography to negotiate. This, on the other hand, is, I think, slightly more worrying, but we don't know. It's not been confirmed yet, any gain there. And then Bakhmut area, no changes. Really good news, considering Chaziv Yar has been so dynamic recently. And you can see that there is agreement between Deep State maps and Syriac maps broadly in this area. The disagreement still in Ivanivska. And Andrew Perpetua doesn't necessarily agree with the other mappers up in the Bodanivka area either. So lots happening there. Not quite sure what's going on. That's why I like to keep you up abreast of the frontline activity with having 3 mappers, so you can get a sense of what might be going on average. Just one source here. Interesting that no reports giving some evidence of Ukrainians using their own guided glide bombs in the Bakhmut area. This is Ivanivska, so Russian-occupied positions inside Ivanivska near Bakhmut being hit with guided bombs. Those that were inside are toast. Well, I mean, it's easy to say that the Russians being toast when they're hit by guided glide bombs, but my goodness, that has glided guide bombs. That has happened to the Ukrainians an awful lot over this war. The Russians have used those munitions so effectively, but it's really good to see the Ukrainians using them back. I think they need parity there. They're not going to get that. They need airframes, and they need a lot of those bombs to the tune that the Russians are using them. But it's good to see that they're trying to use them effectively against the the Russians. Anyway, we move on to the south to Avdiivka area in the Pokrovsk direction, as it is increasingly being labelled due to the where are we? Yes, here it is, Pokrovsk. The settlement that is, or the town, city, whatever you want to call it, that is further to the northwest of Avdiivka. If we look from the front line, that's about 35 kilometers to the center of Pokrovsk, and that's kind of where they're heading. Anyway, some gains for the Russians, as according to Surrey maps again, to the west of Tonyenka, south of Umanska. Here, Surrey maps talks about this by saying that the Russian army made new advances south of Derna River, southeast of Umanska, reaching the outskirts of the locality there. And yeah, that's happened. No more detail on that, really. And then just a small change as far as deep state maps is concerned in the Novomykhailivka area into the middle of the city, moving towards what Surat Maps has there, as previously noted. Just to say that Null Reports says of Pervomaiske, interestingly, and this video came out yesterday, can't definitely confirm that this was a case that the Ukrainians were still fighting in the center of Pervomaiske yesterday. I can't confirm the timing of this video, but the claim is from Null Reports that yesterday the Ukrainians were still fighting in the center of Pervomaiske, and that would of course be pretty controversial, because Pervomaiske is here, and the center of Pervomaiske is going to be sort of around, well, you'd assume they might be somewhere like this. Now, Andriy Perpetua has the Russian control only up to there, and this latter half, the western half of the settlement, is under control of the Russians, as according to the pro-Russian map and deep state map. So not everyone agrees. So it could be that there's fighting still taking place in the center of Pervomaiske. If that's how you want to define the center, I mean, it goes all the way down to here, really. That Pervomaiske appears to be a very long, thin settlement. So if that's where it is, I don't know the geolocation of that. That could well be the case. And the Ukrainians might be able to hit into Pervomaiske from the south. I don't know. Even if the Russians do control parts of it, so, or all of it. So I don't know. Take that with a pinch of salt, but it might not be all over for the Ukrainians in Pervomaiske, I guess is the implication with that claim. And then nothing else to report in the south. I'm not going to go into, due to time constraints today, not going to go into the Institute for the Study of War reports. There will be no doubt things to report of Velika Novosilka, Robotina and Krinky, but no changes to the front lines there, as according to the various mappers. So just a few changes over the course of the day. What's particularly worrying is not so much what's going on the front line for me, it's what's going on in Kharkiv, in Zaporizhia, in Mykolaiv, in Odessa, in Kiev, in Lviv, right? It's the missile barrages that are being sent over nightly, and it's the use of things like Kinzhals in places that aren't Kiev in order to take out these critical pieces of critical infrastructure. However, Kiev as well is not a perfect coverage there. I mean, they've got possibly best coverage in the world, or near to, but certainly in terms of their experience of the crews and the varied air defenses they have around there. But the power station that was hit last night was in the southern outskirts of Kiev, and that shows that, and that was a Kinzhal missile that hit it, or at least one, I don't know how many. So, that's what worries me going forward. If the Russians can have the success they had last night on just a single night, they can have that success going forward as many times as they fire those missiles into Ukraine. And if they take out a power station a week, then very soon Ukraine will have no power left. And when you are relying solely on, say, nuclear, and there's no balanced power, then you might have to shut the nuclear power stations down as well. And there's all sorts of ramifications to changing the balance of energy within a whole network. It's just incredibly worrying as far as I'm concerned. So that's my worry. Frontline, I think the Russians are going to make grinding successes going forward, but at fairly huge costs to them. and that may change in certain localized areas as they get sort of slight breakthroughs here, but I don't know it's going to be like a massive breakthrough, the sort that we saw back in 22, was it now, when the Kharkiv counteroffensive, took that amount of land. I don't think you're going to see that anymore. That kind of activity is just not. This war isn't that anymore. I don't think you can do that with the drone coverage and usage, the sheer numbers of drones, the amount of fortifications that both sides have built. Just that won't happen. So anyway, that's my Frontline update. Thanks for watching. Take care and speak to you soon.